The day before our wedding, my fiancée posted a photo on Instagram of herself and her first love lying together on a bed, half-dressed. Scattered across the floor were several obvious signs of what had happened between them. After seeing it, I couldn't stop myself from commenting, "Nice picture. Looks like we already found tomorrow's wedding theme." Right after that, I grabbed a suitcase and began throwing all her belongings into it, as if I were giving everything away for free. The reason Sophie dared to upload that picture just one day before the wedding was simple. She believed my unconditional devotion meant I would never have the courage to cancel the ceremony. Even after catching her with another man, she was certain I would forgive her without hesitation because she believed I loved her so deeply that I had completely lost my self-respect. But she seemed to forget something she once told me. "Kyle, even if I ever fool around with someone else, it'll never mean anything. My first time will always belong to you." Yet the photos she posted made it painfully obvious what had happened between her and Ethan. First time, it looked like she had already lost count of how many first times she'd given away. At that moment, everything suddenly became clear to me. If Sophie and Ethan truly loved each other so much, then fine. There was no reason for this wedding to continue. At exactly 10 a.m., I finally turned my phone back on. The moment it powered up, dozens of missed calls and countless messages flooded the screen. Sophie immediately called me. "Kyle, what the hell is going on? It's already 10 o'clock and you still haven't arrived. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me? You better prepare double the money gifts because my bridesmaids are furious. Do you even still want to marry me?" I calmly placed the call on speaker and replied, "You should apologize to me first. And after that, apologize to your bridesmaids too. In the past, I would have answered softly and done whatever she wanted. But now, none of it mattered anymore." With a cold laugh, I said sarcastically, "Sophie, are the marks on your neck even going to fade before today? After spending the entire night with Ethan, how much makeup are you planning to use to hide them? This wedding is canceled." She let out a mocking laugh. "So you saw my Instagram post? Is this your pathetic revenge on our wedding day? Kyle, you've seriously watched too many TV dramas." Her tone instantly sharpened. "If my parents weren't forcing me to marry you, do you really think I would? The person I truly love is Ethan. You may have my body, but you'll never have my heart. And don't think you can threaten me with what happened last night." Then she coldly added, "I'm giving you one final chance. Be here before 11 o'clock, or you could forget about this wedding forever." The call ended immediately after that. I could already picture her angrily complaining to her bridesmaids about how they were going to deal with me once I arrived. A moment later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo of Sophie asleep in Ethan's arms. Although the blanket covered most of her body, the marks on her neck and the satisfied smile on her face made it crystal clear what they had done together. Ethan added a message beneath the picture. "She may be marrying you today, but last night was her real wedding night." Without hesitation, I took screenshots of both Sophie's Instagram post and Ethan's message. Then I uploaded them to my own Instagram story with a simple caption, "Wedding canceled. Childhood sweethearts belong together." Almost instantly, my phone exploded with calls and messages from relatives and friends demanding to know what had happened. The wedding was supposed to begin at noon, and by now it was already past 10:30. Canceling a wedding at the last minute was no small matter. Soon after, Sophie's parents called me anxiously. "Kyle, what's happening? Why haven't you arrived yet? We heard from the bridesmaids that the two of you had a fight, and now you want to cancel the wedding. Marriage is serious. You can't treat it like a joke." I stayed silent for a moment. No matter what, they were still my elders, and I couldn't bring myself to speak rudely to them. But deep inside, I already knew I wanted nothing more to do with Sophie. The moment I finally accepted the truth, it felt as though my heart had turned completely cold. Softly, I answered, "Professor, I'm not throwing a tantrum, and this isn't some argument. Sophie has always loved Ethan, never me." You can see everything clearly on her Instagram. Sophie's father had been my university professor, and that was exactly how I first met her. He had always treated me kindly, and one of the biggest reasons I tolerated Sophie's behavior for so long was because I respected him deeply. I often wondered how such a good teacher could have a daughter who behaved this way. I kept convincing myself that Sophie was only making temporary mistakes. But eventually, I realized I was wrong. You can't force someone to love you. Back in college, both the professor and his wife strongly disliked Ethan. He had done everything possible to chase after Sophie, flattering her constantly and saying whatever she wanted to hear. But everyone knew his real goal was simply to establish himself in the city. He even encouraged Sophie to fight against her own parents, hoping they would help him secure a permanent position on campus so he could stay there and marry her. The problem was that Ethan's academic performance was terrible. There was no chance the university would allow him to stay. Meanwhile, I had progressed from a master's degree into a PhD under the professor's guidance. Along the way, I won several national scholarships and published numerous academic papers. In the end, the university awarded that year's campus position to me. But Ethan and Sophie blamed me for everything. They insisted I had stolen the opportunity from him. The truth was ridiculous. Ethan had only graduated with a bachelor's degree. There was no realistic way the school would ever choose him. Still, Sophie believed every word he said. She became convinced that I had robbed Ethan of his future. Back at the apartment, I finally finished packing all of Sophie's belongings in several large suitcases. I had just picked up my phone to call the moving company when the elevator doors suddenly opened. Sophie stormed out, still wearing her wedding dress. "Are you finally done with your childish tantrum?" Sophie snapped while still standing in her wedding dress. "If you are, then come with me to the hotel already. All the guests are waiting." Looking at the anxious expression on her face, I let out a faint smile. "Sophie," I said coldly, "wasn't last night already your wedding night with Ethan?" She froze instantly. I sneered before continuing. "I already informed our friends and relatives that the wedding has been canceled. I sincerely wish you and Ethan a happy life together." Sophie's face darkened immediately. "Kyle, have you even thought about my parents?" she shouted. "They were your professors. Do you have no conscience at all? They're already old. Can't you imagine how humiliating this will be for them?" I inhaled deeply before replying calmly. "Oh, really? Then when you shamelessly slept with Ethan, did you ever stop to think about how embarrassed your parents would feel? You even posted intimate pictures online. At this point, what is there left to be embarrassed about?" Her eyes filled with anger as she clenched her teeth. "Fine," she snapped. "I'll reduce my contact with Ethan from now on. Isn't that enough for you? Stop being so unreasonable. Who doesn't have ex-boyfriends or ex-girlfriends before marriage? Last night was only meant to be a final goodbye to my past relationship. In the end, I was still planning to marry you today. You're seriously making a huge issue out of nothing." Looking at the contempt on her face, I suddenly regretted everything. How could I have spent so many years loving someone like her? Without another word, I showed her the picture Ethan had sent me. "I may have loved you deeply," I said quietly, "but not enough to let you humiliate me like this. I'm not going to smile through a wedding while my fiancé cheats on me behind my back. I already packed your belongings. Take them with you now, otherwise I'll ask the cleaners to throw everything away." After saying that, I pushed the suitcases outside and slammed the door shut directly in front of her. From the hallway, Sophie screamed furiously, "Kyle, don't you dare regret this." I ignored her completely, locked the bedroom door, and finally allowed myself to rest. The next morning, when I switched my phone back on, it almost froze from the overwhelming number of calls and messages from worried relatives and friends. I answered a few important ones before noticing a message from Professor Smith, Sophie's father, and also my mentor, asking me to come over immediately. Thinking about how kindly he and his wife had treated me throughout the years, guilt slowly crept into my chest. In the end, I decided to visit them. The moment I entered their house, I saw Sophie sitting stiffly on the couch, her chin raised defiantly. "Kyle," she scoffed, "didn't you already say you didn't want to get married anymore? Then why are you here, trying to convince my parents to pressure me? Do you seriously have no shame?" Before I could answer, Professor Smith stood up angrily. "That's enough, Sophie," he shouted. "Is this truly how I raised you? You've completely disappointed me." Sophie immediately fired back. "I'm my own person with my own opinions. I'm not some puppet you can control just because you want me to like someone. I've only ever loved Ethan." Then she pointed at me. "And besides, Kyle is the one refusing to get married now, not me. Why are you blaming me?" Isn't he supposed to be the perfect son-in-law you always wanted? Tears filled her mother's eyes as she spoke painfully. Sophie, look at what you've done. How do you expect Kyle to accept all of this? How could you and Ethan behave this way? Sophie glared at me stubbornly. Even if I agreed to marry him, my heart was never his, she declared. My body and soul have always belonged to Ethan. Feeling emotionally exhausted, I stepped forward and looked directly into her eyes. When I pursued you, I asked quietly, did I ever force you to do anything against your will? When I proposed to you, did I pressure you? Our relationship existed because you agreed to it willingly. So why are you suddenly acting like your parents, or I force you into this? I paused before continuing bitterly. For all these years, I truly believed I was a good boyfriend to you. I never imagined you viewed our relationship this way. The professor's hands trembled violently with anger. You keep saying you love Ethan, he shouted. But do you even understand what kind of person he really is? Do you know the things he's done? You're clearly blinded by him. Still, Sophie remained stubborn. You two treated Ethan unfairly, she argued, and he never even blamed you for it. Earlier you told me not to stay angry at you, but now you're criticizing him again. You're the ones acting without conscience. Her mother slammed her hand against the table. What exactly did we ever do to him? She demanded. Sophie sneered coldly. Do we really have to spell it out? You stole Ethan's university position and gave it to Kyle instead. And Kyle, stop pretending to be innocent. Everybody knows you only got that opportunity because you kept sucking up to my father. The professor suddenly clutched his chest as his breathing became uneven. What did you just say? He asked shakily. I've spent my entire life living honestly, and now my own daughter accuses me of corruption for the sake of a student? Sophie stood up dramatically and crossed her arms. Isn't it true? She challenged. If I weren't your daughter, and if Ethan hadn't stopped me, I would have reported both of you a long time ago. The professor's face turned deathly pale as he pointed toward the door. Good, he said bitterly. I truly raised an excellent daughter. Go ahead and report me then. Get out. Get out right now. You'll regret this. Sophie shot back coldly while storming toward the door. Just wait. I'll make sure Ethan gets back everything he deserves. Then she slammed the door behind her. The loud echo had barely faded when the professor suddenly collapsed onto the floor. Professor! The entire room instantly fell into chaos. I stood there completely frozen while Sophie's mother rushed desperately to support him, try to help him breathe normally again. The anger inside me mixed with guilt and shock, leaving my mind completely blank. But before I could fully react, before I could even say a single word, Sophie suddenly turned toward me, her face overflowing with rage. This is all your fault, she screamed, pointing directly at me, as though I alone had caused every disaster that had happened. Part of me wanted to argue back. I wanted to remind her that she was the one who cheated, lied, manipulated everyone around her, and destroyed everything with her own actions. But in the end, I stayed silent. At that moment, there was nothing left worth saying. Without another word, I walked out of the house, leaving behind an unbearable heaviness in the air. That was the true ending between Sophie and me. Or at least, that's what I believed. Over the following days, I moved into a small apartment by myself. The wedding had officially been canceled, but the chaos surrounding us was far from over. Sophie, furious that I had exposed her affair and taken control of the situation before she could, started a vicious campaign against me on social media. Day after day, she uploaded posts accusing me of manipulating her, controlling her life, and even stealing Ethan's future by taking the university position he supposedly deserved. Every new post made my blood boil. She twisted the truth so cruelly that even I barely recognized the story she was telling. Some friends supported me and tried to defend me online, but there were also countless strangers who blindly believed her version of events and attacked me relentlessly. Sophie wasn't satisfied with destroying our relationship. She wanted to destroy my reputation, my career, and my entire future. Worst of all, she used her devastated parents to gain sympathy, publicly implying that I was responsible for her father's sudden health crisis. Then things became even worse. Without my knowledge, Sophie had already started involving lawyers. One afternoon, I was suddenly called into a meeting at the university where I both worked and studied. They informed me that serious concerns had been raised regarding my personal and academic conduct. That was when I learned Sophie had submitted a formal accusation against me. In her complaint, she claimed that I had plagiarized sections of my academic research and unfairly obtained scholarships and opportunities through favoritism because of my close relationship with Professor Smith. Naturally, the university had no choice but to launch an official investigation. During the investigation, I was suspended from my academic position. Losing everything I'd worked so hard to build felt devastating. But I refused to let Sophie destroy my entire life without fighting back. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find: old emails, research drafts, academic records, and official correspondence, all proving that my achievements were earned honestly through years of hard work. Even so, the damage had already spread. Rumors traveled quickly throughout the academic community, and many people began looking at me with suspicion. While I struggled desperately to clear my name, Sophie escalated things even further. Apparently, social media and false accusations at work weren't enough for her. She began targeting my family next. My parents, who had fully supported me at first, started receiving constant phone calls and unexpected visits from Sophie. With her flawless acting skills, she convinced my mother that I had emotionally manipulated her into the relationship and pressured her into marriage through my connection to her father. My mother, who had always believed deeply in the importance of marriage and family, slowly began doubting me. Little by little, Sophie turned my own family against me, and before long, I found myself completely alone. Then she delivered the cruelest blow of all. One rainy morning, Sophie suddenly appeared outside my apartment. She calmly announced that she was pregnant. Looking directly into my eyes with an icy smile, she said, "I've thought everything through. No matter what happened between us, Ethan and I are going to raise this child together. But everyone is going to believe you're the biological father." I was completely stunned. How could that even be possible? I demanded. "We haven't been together for months before everything ended." Then the horrible truth suddenly hit me. This was another manipulation, another trap. She intended to drag me into a legal and financial nightmare, forcing me to pay child support while destroying whatever remained of my personal and professional life. The pressure became almost unbearable. I felt trapped from every direction. Eventually, I decided to speak with a lawyer. He was straightforward and brutally honest. "If she brings this case to court," he explained, "you'll need proof that you're not the father. Right now, it's her word against yours, and that alone won't protect you. The only real solution is a court-approved paternity test. But until those results come back, your reputation will remain at risk." As all this chaos continued unfolding around me, I quietly began investigating Sophie and Ethan's past more carefully. What I discovered changed everything. Ethan had been using Sophie from the very beginning. He never truly loved her. He wasn't interested in marriage, loyalty, or building a future together. What he wanted was access to her family's money, influence, and academic connections. To him, Sophie was nothing more than a tool, someone he could manipulate, exploit, and eventually discard once she was no longer useful. And Sophie, completely blinded by her obsession with him, was willing to sacrifice everything for the illusion of his love. That was the moment I made my decision. I refused to let them ruin my life any further. I officially filed a defamation lawsuit against both Sophie and Ethan, gathering evidence that proved they had deliberately attempted to destroy my reputation, career, and future. Soon after, the paternity test was finally conducted. And exactly as I had already known, as expected, the paternity test proved that I was not the father. Inside the courtroom, both Sophie and Ethan were fully exposed for the manipulators and liars they truly were. The judge not only dismissed Sophie's false paternity claim, but also ordered her to compensate me financially for the emotional distress and damage she had caused to both my personal and professional life. In the end, Sophie lost everything. Her reputation was completely destroyed. Her parents, after finally learning the full truth about her behavior and manipulation, chose to stand by my side instead of hers. And Ethan, the man who had tried so hard to use her for his own benefit, disappeared the moment her family's money and influence were no longer available. Eventually, Sophie was left completely alone. As for me, I slowly began rebuilding my life piece by piece, although the scars from everything that happened never fully disappeared. The most frustrating moment came later, when Sophie, after losing everyone and everything, tried contacting me once again. "Kyle," she said softly, "I know I made mistakes. Can we please start over? Deep down, I've always loved you. I was just confused." The only answer I gave her was closing the door in her face with a relieved smile. After the trial ended and the truth finally came out publicly, I decided to move forward with my life for good. It had been one of the most painful periods I had ever experienced, but I refused to let that dark chapter define who I was forever. Sophie had tried to destroy everything I worked for, but she failed. So instead of dwelling on the past, I focused entirely on what truly mattered: my future, my personal growth, and my career. Returning to work after my suspension was difficult. Many people still looked at me with doubt at first. However, once the university investigation confirmed my innocence and Sophie's lies were fully exposed, I regained my academic position and slowly restored my reputation. I continued publishing research papers, participating in conferences, and expanding my work. With every new achievement, I felt myself becoming stronger again. Each success helped erase another piece of the shadow Sophie had left over my life. About 2 years after all the chaos ended, I met Camila. She was completely different from anyone I had ever known before: intelligent, caring, mature, and most importantly, respectful. From the very beginning, she treated me with a level of honesty and sincerity that I hadn't realized I had been missing for years. Spending time with her made me understand what a truly healthy relationship looked like. Being with Camila felt peaceful and uplifting instead of exhausting and painful. She always supported my career and encouraged my professional goals, but she also reminded me to slow down occasionally and enjoy life outside of work, something I had neglected for a very long time. Little by little, we grew together emotionally and professionally. With her beside me, I not only improved in my academic career, but also found the confidence to embrace new opportunities that I once would have ignored. Eventually, we bought a house together, and later we got married. Our relationship was everything Sophie and I could never have achieved: a partnership built on trust, mutual respect, support, honesty, and shared growth. For a while, I truly believed the story with Sophie was finally over forever. But about 4 years after our breakup, another legal notice unexpectedly appeared. Sophie was attempting to sue me again. This time, she claimed she deserved emotional compensation because I had supposedly promised her a future during our years together. According to her argument, that emotional investment justified financial support from me despite the fact that we had no legal ties, no marriage, and no children. The entire claim was absurd. Still, knowing Sophie, I honestly wasn't shocked anymore. Fortunately, this time I was fully prepared. My lawyer practically laughed when she reviewed the documents, and together we quickly organized our defense. Once the case reached court, it became painfully obvious to everyone that Sophie was simply desperate. By then, her parents had completely cut contact with her after discovering the full extent of her lies and manipulations. Ethan had abandoned her as soon as he realized she no longer had access to family money or influence. Now unemployed, isolated, and without any real support system, Sophie was desperately searching for any possible way to pull me down with her again. But this time she had nothing. The judge dismissed the lawsuit almost immediately after reviewing the evidence and documentation, proving her claims had no legal basis whatsoever. She didn't receive a single cent. That was the final time I ever heard from Sophie. Later, through mutual acquaintances, I learned that her life had become completely different from the glamorous future she once imagined for herself. Without financial support from her parents, Sophie had ended up living in a friend's apartment while barely surviving through temporary jobs. Her family, once respected and influential, had completely distanced themselves from her because of the shame and damage she brought upon them. In some ways, it was tragic, but at the same time, I understood that those were simply the consequences of her own choices. Eventually, life caught up to her. Meanwhile, my own life continued moving in the opposite direction. With Camila beside me, my career flourished more than ever before. I became increasingly respected within my academic field, and my research papers began receiving international recognition. My work opened doors to consulting opportunities, conferences, and speaking engagements in different parts of the world. Having a partner who genuinely respected me, believed in my abilities, and encouraged my growth made an enormous difference in my life. Through Camila, I learned that a healthy relationship is about far more than romance alone. True love is built on respect, support, trust, understanding, and helping each other grow into better people. One evening during dinner, Camila looked in my eyes warmly and said, "I'm so proud of the man you've become and everything we've built together. And honestly, I believe the best parts of our life are still ahead of us." Her words touched me deeply because they perfectly reflected everything I felt inside. We had already come so far together, and I knew that with her by my side, there were no limits to what we could achieve. Now, when I look back on everything that happened, I realized that even the most painful experiences eventually led me to where I am today. Sophie was undoubtedly one of the darkest chapters of my life. But meeting someone like Camila showed me how powerful life can become when you are with someone who truly respects and values you. Today, I finally live the life I once dreamed of, free from the ghosts of the past, surrounded by peace, love, success, and genuine happiness.